operates different.
Madam,
The meeting of the Committee on Strategic Planning and Budget of the Board of School Directors will please come to order. Will the Secretary please call the roll?
Director Carr.
Present.
Director Garcia. Director Herndon.
Present.
Director Jackson.
Present.
Director Leonard has asked to be excused. Director O'Halloran.
Here.
Director Seamson.
Present.
Director Zambor. And Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Present.
That's 7 members present. We have a quorum.
The Chair will now ask the Secretary to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. The Chair invites any members of the audience who wish to participate to do so and asks that those who do not wish to participate please remain silent during the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being conducted in person from the Central Services Building. In order to allow as much public access and participation as possible, this meeting is also being broadcast via live stream on the MPS website and on the MPS YouTube stream, the links which may be found on the MPS website on the broadcast page. Before we begin tonight's meeting, we have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la Junta Escolar de las Escuelas Públicas de Milwaukee. Si desea escuchar esta reunión en español, por favor llame al 312-626-6799. Nuevamente, 312-626-6799. E introduzca el número de reunión 608-130-5362. Nuevamente, el número de reunión es 608-130-5362. Gracias.
For items 1 and 2 on tonight's agenda, we will hold a discussion and public hearing. Anyone who wishes to speak on item 1 or on the budget or budget amendments should please fill out a speaker's slip and bring it to our secretary, Ms. Koala. Virtual speakers are asked to remain on the platform until you are called upon. After speaking, virtual speakers may follow the rest of the meeting using the broadcast information previously mentioned. When you are called upon to speak, please state your name and spell your last name for the record. For the sake of fairness and to give everyone a chance to speak, the chair reserves the right to limit the length of time allowed to any one speaker. Written testimony will be accepted for transmittal to the board. Send this testimony to the Office of Board Governance, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201-2181, or fax to 414-475-8071, or email it to governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us. Just as a reminder, Robert's Rule of Orders dictates that all comments should be directed to the chair of the committee. Also, any questions or requests, including those from the public, committee members, or the administration, are to be directed toward the chair, who will determine the most efficient way to address them. For the safety of all and to ensure the good order of the meeting, harassment or intimidation tactics of any kind will not be tolerated. Anyone who engages in such harassing or intimidating words or actions will immediately be asked to cease. If such behavior continues, a recess will be called, and the offending parties will be removed from the meeting. Anyone ejected from the meeting may continue to listen to the meeting or access the agenda items online. However, he or she will not be allowed to rejoin the meeting. No one other than members of the board, designated staff, and those who have been invited to present or participate in items of business will be allowed on the stage before, during, or after meetings of the board and its committees. Finally, for our listening audience, if you wish to access this evening's agenda items and attachments online, you may do so by visiting the meetings, agendas, and minutes page of the MPS website. Now let's begin. Madam Secretary, item number 1.
Item 1 is a report with possible action on the district's elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund evaluation plan. This is an informational item. Although it has been noticed for possible action, no action is required.
Would the administration please present the item?
Yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Keith Posley, Superintendent of Schools. This evening, we bring to you an update on the ESSER evaluation plan. To report out on this item, I have here with me Shelley Perkins, Director of State and Federal Programs. And after the team has completed, we'd be more than happy to entertain any questions that you may have. Ms. Perkins.
Thank you, Dr. Posley. Chair Gogo Gandhi, members of the committee, my name is Shelley Perkins, Director of State and Federal Programs. As you know, ESSER funding has provided MPS with many opportunities, and we are grateful. The ESSER funding has provided support for students through opportunities in the following categories: accelerating learning, health and wellness, facilities, technology, and extracurricular engagement. A significant portion of the pandemic relief aid must be used to implement evidence-based programs and interventions that attend to students' academic, social, and emotional needs. The evaluation of ESSER programs is critical in determining whether the district is implementing the activities and projects as planned and the effect the programming is having on student achievement. We are excited to have the opportunity to share an overview of the evaluation work that has begun with the American Institute for Research. Since August of 2022, AIR has joined the ESSER team during our weekly scheduled meetings. They will evaluate a minimum of 3 key ESSER-funded initiatives on dimensions such as implementation, outcomes, and costs. I am going to turn it over to Carrie Scholes from AIR to provide more details on the evaluation work.
Chair Gogo Gandhi, members of the committee, my name is Carrie Scholes. I'm a principal researcher for the American Institutes for Research. As Shelley mentioned, our team will evaluate the ESSER funds and the investments made thus far. As part of the evaluation, we have 3 streams of work. The first is to create a geospatial mapping to present how the funds have been invested across the district. The second is to look more closely at 3 particular investments: tutoring, social studies, and mental health. And finally, as part of the work, as we learn how the implementation and outcomes are looking, we will provide technical assistance where there's opportunities for improvement. So to date, we've developed the scopes of work in partnership with the district leads and have received approval and have partnered with the Department of Research Assessment and Data on our research application. We recently facilitated focus groups with the social studies teachers, and since these slides were submitted, launched a survey about the implementation of the new curricula. Just to be clear, tonight I won't have any data to share with you because this work is just getting underway. We want to preview what's to come. So in terms of our timeline, the data collection has gotten underway and analysis will be forthcoming. The reporting will happen once annually over the course of the 2 years of the project. And we will debrief with the team and provide technical assistance that I mentioned. So these next few slides will talk about the specific 3 streams of work that we're going into more detail. The first is the GIS mapping, where we'll show how the funds have been invested across the district within particular regions for tutoring, health and wellness, technology, extracurricular, and facilities. We're going to look at which students and caregivers are accessing the tutoring and mental health services that are offered at the schools, and also what is the relationship between access and actual outcomes at the student level. So the GIS mapping is what I like to think of the larger umbrella effort to look at the investments. Then going more deeply into the subsequent evaluations for tutoring, we're going to be looking at participation rates in the different tutoring options, the duration and timing of the tutoring services that are accessed, and then associated outcomes, both test scores as well as attendance. And you'll see on the slide below the actual data sources that we'll be using for this evaluation. For the social studies curriculum, as a refresher, you all know that the different curricula were adopted and are being implemented this year. So we're looking at both the usability, feasibility, acceptability of the implementation, as well as student outcomes. So we're going to be looking at how do teachers feel they are prepared to implement the curriculum, their perceptions of the curriculum, and feed that information back to the district leads. Then the extent to which the teachers actually have implemented and the student outcomes associated with that implementation. So as I mentioned, the teacher survey has been launched and the focus groups have been recently completed. We'll look at student outcomes as well. And that third investment, the mental health piece, is the last deep dive of the study that I want to talk about today. So looking at participation in the therapy sessions and the duration of those sessions, the extent to which students enrolled and received services after a referral was made, any barriers to participation that families identify, and then outcomes related to students' mental health from before versus after the services were received. So in terms of what we are going to be providing as deliverables, we'll be developing slide decks for the district so that we can communicate the findings in a streamlined way as they are available. As I mentioned, we'll have 2 reports, one each year, that will go into more detailed descriptions about the analyses and the data used, and then be providing updates to the board when key milestones are completed. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Do committee members wish to ask questions on this item? Yes, Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. So I understand we can expect 2 reports, one in each year. Do you have an estimation of like when the timing would be? Would it be like spring, fall, just so that we can, if people in the audience are interested in hearing, I mean, we'll be here, but if anybody wants to tune into those meetings, when should we expect that?
Certainly. For the public, I think the most interesting will be in October when the actual map will be available. So that's designed largely for transparency purposes so people can see where, which regions are accessing which opportunities. So I think October would be the best first touch point.
Any follow-up, Director O'Halloran? Any other questions from committee members? Director Jackson?
Yeah, as far as student body, is there the special needs included in that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Any follow-up?
No.
Any other questions? Director Garcia?
Thank you. So my question is in regards to, I guess, the data that's being analyzed, specifically in the geomapping. What is the plan if there's anything that we find to be not like distributed evenly across the board? Like, let's say there's a higher concentration in either a certain district or side of town. Like, are we already thinking about, I don't know, steps to remediate that? Or is that just more of an informational piece as to how spending was done? So I'm just wondering, like, is this more of an introspective thing, or is this an opportunity for us to eventually take action on making sure that future investments kind of even the keel of those distribution of resources?
Members of the committee, Shelley Perkins. This will give us the opportunity to see how we will plan moving forward. We know that the ESSER funding will be ending, but it will let us know how we will plan with the budget moving forward and what key things we want to keep and how we should expand on those different activities that are budgeted in ESSER.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, one of the other things that we'll be able to do is we will have a blueprint of what's happening, and so therefore, in future budgets and future dollars, we will know where we need to make investments. So it will be a roadmap to where we need to go to make sure that we have also done everything we possibly could to equally and as well as from an equity standpoint as well around the dollars and see what we need to work on.
Any other questions? I have a question. Are you aggregating any data for any other school districts that are comparable to ours?
Currently, not to my knowledge, we're in conversations with other districts. We've done similar work for states at the state level where we could share example maps that we've created. That would be of use.
Yeah, I was just wondering, if you could provide sort of a comparative analysis of maybe how other districts our size with our population are spending their ESSER dollars, and if it looks similar to ours, or if there are any innovative practices that they're using that maybe we could follow. So just wondering if that would be applicable to add to the report.
I could definitely see what we are doing internally to see if we can have, that would be additional analyses, but we could actually see what we could provide to you. Yes.
Any other comments? Director Garcia.
Sorry. I know that a lot of the comments that was received, at the front end for ESSER spending and the way that schools were designated their available dollars, it's this idea of spending it in bricks and mortar versus, as this report is delineating program that impacted, curriculum, that impacted programs around mental health. Is anything being done to help us kind of dig a little deeper into, that decision that schools took of investing in bricks and mortar versus, programs?
Administration.
Chair Gogo Gandhi, members of the committee. Well, a lot of the funding was broken down where schools did receive a certain amount of funding as it relates to health and wellness. So schools did receive a pot of money under health and wellness. So when they received, if you're referencing the $100,000, they may not have used that towards health and wellness because there was money already set aside for health and wellness for each of the schools. Does that answer your question?
Director Garcia.
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other questions? Sure. Director Jackson.
Does this also apply to partnership schools as well?
Chair Gogo Gandhi, members of the committee, partnerships in our contracted schools, which would be our non-instrumentality schools and our partnership schools, did receive a share of this funding. And they were allowed to use it as they saw fit that it pertained to their school, as long as it was allowable under this funding source.
Director Jackson. Any other questions? Do any members of the public wish to make comments?
We had no requests from the public to speak on this item, Madam Chair.
Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is item 2, which is an informational overview and the public hearing on the 23-24 superintendent's proposed budget. This item is informational and for public hearing.
This will be our final discussion and public hearing on the budget. After this discussion, our next item will be a work session on the budget amendments. Does the administration have any additional information or comments?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this evening we're prepared to engage in an overview of the 2023-24 proposed budget. With me this evening is Martha Kreisman, Chief Financial Officer, and together with our team, we're prepared to update you on the 2023-24 proposed budget. Martha.
Director Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. I'm so excited about what we have done financially to secure the district by paying down post-employment benefit obligations, adding to the long-term capital improvement trust, and rebuilding the district's fund balance, essential for financial stability. I'm enthusiastic about what the budget will provide for the district, but I'm concerned about a state funding formula that's not keeping pace with inflation. And as I've mentioned before, our per pupil amount under the revenue cap has been stable since 2010-11, basically stable. It would be $10,476 if we didn't have the referendum, and in 2010-11, it was $10,013. Despite these fiscal constraints, the budget capitalizes on expanding opportunities for schools, students, and staff. The superintendent's balanced budget is focused on meeting students' needs and retaining high-quality staff. If passed, it will invest in our staff, providing 8% cost of living adjustment for employees to offset the impact of inflation. Without the inflationary increase, we are basically indirectly cutting staff salaries. Funding school support teachers who add value to classrooms and learning with an increased focus on reading, English language arts, and math. School support teachers work directly with students and help ensure ambitious instruction, teacher professional development impacts the classroom. More dollars will be available to schools to meet the needs of students at the school level. School funding was increased by $19.1 million, showing the commitment to the classroom. We focus on student well-being with funds directed to enhance tutoring, including after-school and extra support during the school day. Offer additional mental health services, providing in-school mental health supports and also outside the school day through teletherapy. Upgrading food services, providing student-friendly, nutritious meals that meet USDA requirements, investing in school buildings and facilities. And we are here to answer any questions that you may have about the budget. Thank you.
Do committee members wish to make comments or ask questions? Do we have public testimony on this item?
Madam Chair, we do have individuals in person who registered to speak, and we also have some individuals who are on the virtual platform.
Great, let's start with individuals on the virtual platform.
Okay. The first individual on the virtual platform is Angela Lucas Foley. If you would please state your name, spell your last name, and then give your comments.
Angela Lucas Foley, Lucas, space Foley. Good evening, Superintendent Posley, Chair Gokul Gandhi, and directors. I come to you this evening as a proud white educator of this district. I am directing tonight's testimony at 3 of the 5 amendments submitted by board directors. Amendment 4 was submitted to, quote, look at growth indicators of the elementary IB school population from Chair Gokul Gandhi and Director O'Halloran. This is nothing more than $500,000 to look at shiny things. We are a dying district. Enrollment has been and continues to decrease every year. How will these funds change the climate of buildings that have had full-time teacher vacancies for the duration of the school year? Which means that these students in these classrooms are now finishing their 3rd school year of disrupted and substandard learning. Might these funds be better spent looking at ways to support schools who are continually and consistently short-staffed? Amendment 1, also from Chair Gokul Gandhi and Director O'Halloran, looks to, quote, create an advocate position to assist constituents. Again, this amendment is nothing more than another short-sighted middle management position with no roots or wings. It is funded through ESSER, which means in the lesser part of a year, this position will disappear. How will it have shaped and supported the climates of the buildings I referenced above? Finally, Amendment 3 from Director Carr and Director Leonard states to, quote, fund the continuous training of MPS staff and MPS in anti-racist and anti-bias practices. Though this amendment is a start, it is honestly insulting. Everyone in this room tonight knows that our district needs more support in understanding equity and what equity means in buildings on both sides of I-94. We need consistent and ongoing professional development around understanding our own color and also the ways the district functions to uphold supremacy and success of some students and families at the expense of others. As a white educator of this district, I am asking that you collapse the funding from Amendments 1 and 4 and roll these dollars into Amendment 3 and give anti-racist work the funding and support it deserves in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker on the virtual platform is Beverly Hamilton Williams. Please state your name, spell your last name, and give your comments. Beverly Hamilton Williams.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Beverly Williams, WILLIAMS, representing Community Takeover, excuse me, for Milwaukee's children. We do not support the 23-24 budget, the current budget. It needs to be reviewed with an audit before it is passed. We do not agree with underfunding Black schools in segregated Milwaukee with teaching staff by the $74 million that's needed in your budget. We do not agree with the MPS suspension rate of 15,229 students, according to your current PACE reports, basically because you have like 16% Black teachers. The current interventions are not working. Also, truancy is not addressed in the current budget. The 23-24 budget does not address the 50% truancy rate at MPS. We want a committee of citizens, 2 board members, community leaders, and the MPD to review reinstating the truancy officers in the 23-24 budget before it is passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that was the last speaker on the virtual platform.
Great. We will start with Gerald Roche, and please correct me if I say your last name incorrectly. And Riley Jessett will be after that.
My last name is Resch, R-O-E-S-C-H. My address is 6937 North 98th Street in Milwaukee, 53224. I'm a member of MICA and a member of Incarnation Lutheran Church on 15th and Keith. I wish to speak in favor of the anti-racist practice development budget amendment number 5. The thing is that many MPS teachers are hardworking and do an outstanding job. For good reason, teachers are required to update themselves in their subjects. A science teacher cannot be expected to teach out of a 1936 physics book or have a 1936 physics mindset. A teacher must be able to explain the latest discoveries. In the same way, each teacher should be updated in facing the world in which his students live. Teachers need ongoing information to face their students as well as to face the subjects that they teach. A teacher facing today's students cannot be expected to take an introductory course of courageous conversations about race and be expected to embed that into their mind and teaching practices for the next 30 years. MPS teachers are good and capable, but we cannot expect them to be perfect and take a single course and suddenly change what society has drilled into their minds since they were born. There seems to be an ongoing program. There needs to be an ongoing program to teach the teachers. The proposed 5-year plan is a start in anti-racism, anti-bias training, and restorative practices for current and newly hired staff. The teaching of anti-racism, anti-bias, and restorative practices staff needs to be mandatory and ongoing
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you so much. We will have Riley Jessett and Dante Nobles next.
You can begin. State your name, spell your last name, please, and then give your comments.
Okay. Riley Jessett, Jessett. So I'm a member of ARWE, that's Aspiring Anti-Racist White Educators, and the Equity Coalition. I'm also the director of the Genius Science Lab at Carson Academy. I'm speaking in favor of the budget amendment number 5 around anti-racist practice development. So as a white educator, I feel like I've grown so much by discussing whiteness, racism, and anti-blackness with my colleagues in ARWE and the Equity Coalition. I've become more responsive and less reactive, reevaluated all my classroom practices, and held myself to a higher standard, which has resulted in better outcomes for my students. Recently, however, we were discussing how we engage with this work with people all around the city, but not people in our home buildings. In fact, my whole staff is not engaged meaningfully in anti-racist work in the 6 years I've been at Carson. So now is as good a time as any to get MPS staff engaged in this crucial work, which will help the district's mission to build strong, positive relationships between young people and adults to showcase the path to academic and life success. I'm sure everyone on the school board would consider anti-racism to be a personal or even an organizational value, but as budgets or moral documents, I would challenge you all to find another place in the budget that anti-racism work explicitly shows up. And as all educators know, if it's not explicitly taught, it will not be learned. So I urge you to the board to pass amendment number 5. And that's it. Thank you.
Dante Nobles, and then we will have Jeffrey. I can't really read your last name, so you can let me know what it is, but you are after Dante Nobles.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Payne. My last name is spelled Payne. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Posley, and members of the board. I am from Milwaukee, Marshall, and I urge you to use the money from the ESSER funds to really look at the school lunch justice task force, as well as like just school lunch in general, because I feel like that's a very big issue within MPS and just as like a whole. School lunch has been awful, like awful. It's gone downhill throughout the years, and it's really sad to hear stories from like other people talking about how great it was back then, or how it used to be, or like how quality has just gotten down, and how production kitchens have been obsolete for so long. And I believe there's only like 2 in MPS as a whole. There's only 2 production kitchens, while everything else is just like everything goes from that place to here, and then we all get lunches. At a task force meeting with Director Simpson and Leonard, we were talking about how our lunches were so different. Like Riverside was given the lunch on the menu for the MPS board, but we were just given like a packet of burgers at best. And I just wish it was different, or I wish that you guys could see it from my point of view, what it's like to hear from other schools who are clearly more privileged. Like if you hear a student say, "Oh, I'm from Golden," you're automatically going to think they're smarter than a kid from North Division. And you may say, "Oh no, I don't think like that at all," but that is the way the common people think. Like if somebody's from Golden, they're obviously going to be a higher standing student, and will give them much more opportunities to the kid from North Division, South Division, or even Marshall. I'm from Marshall, and I can say I have not been given many opportunities, like from kids from Riverside, hearing about how their lunches are so much better and different, or they actually get what's on the menu from me, was really sad and difficult to hear. And I just wish that it would change. And I hope you guys take the time to understand and look into the nutrition department, other departments that work with the food, and actually ask questions, push forward for it, and actually pass something that would actually help us students eat and grow. Because 80% of us are from low-income families and don't get food at home. School's my only chance, man. Please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Oh my God.
Please state your name, spell your last name, and then give your comments.
Okay, my name is Dontavius Nobles, last name Nobles, and okay, I am a member of LIT, and I go to Milwaukee High School of the Arts. I'm here today to talk about mental health and speak about what students need in this year's budget. Mental health is a major issue. I have learned firsthand the importance of mental health awareness in our school education. Growing up, I often felt overwhelmed and stressed by the demands of academic life and didn't have the tools or resources to manage my emotions effectively. However, as mental health awareness has become more integrated in school curricula, I have noticed a significant shift in the way educators approach students' well-being through attentive, such as mindfulness, exercises, stress reduction techniques, and open discussions about mental health. I have learned how to identify my own emotions, needs, and develop coping mechanisms that work for me. Additionally, I have felt more comfortable seeking support from my peers and teachers when I need it, without fear of judgment or isolation. In my opinion, mental health awareness should be a core component of school education by prioritizing the well-being of students, such as schools can create a more supportive and inclusive learning environment and where students can thrive academically and emotionally. Ultimately, I believe that investing in mental health education is an investment in the future of our society, as it promotes resilience, empathy, and a greater understanding of one another. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ray Chappelle, and after that is Kelly Lempa.
Ray Chappelle, fifth grade teacher, member of Aspiring Anti-Racist White Educators Milwaukee and the Equity Coalition, CHAPPELLE. Chair Gokul Gandhi, members of the committee, to be oh so clear, I am here to speak in support of Budget Amendment Number 5, sponsored by Director Carr and Director Leonard. If I could get through all 135 of these precious seconds that I am allotted without being interrupted, that'd be fantastic. I find it imperative to point out that although our amendment specifically stated that these anti-racist trainings need to be mandated and ongoing, MPS administrators decided that the best way to fund this vital work is through ESSER 1 funds. Now, I'm unclear exactly how supporting this work through ESSER funds is feasible when it seems like the money is starting to dry up. The MPS Office of Finance's website states that ESSER 1 funds were for costs incurred between March 13th, 2020 and September 30th, 2022. So maybe someone on the board could ask how this crucial work would be funded with money that seems to have already been spent. The choice to finance this work through ESSER funds also means that myself and other passionate educators and community members will need to continue to advocate on behalf of anti-racist professional development every budget cycle, and consequently, the board will have to approve this request each year. While members of RWE and the Equity Coalition are prepared to persevere, I have to ask myself, where are the rest of y'all at? Mandating and sustaining anti-racist practices is our collective call to action, especially us white folks. It is our duty to address systemic racism head-on within ourselves as individuals and in community with one another. And the pushback we have received on this, or at the very least, the lack of meaningful commitment, is truly baffling. When we all claim to want to save public education, and when we claim to care about all of the young people we serve. Just imagine the impact that radically transforming our district's current culture and climate, which some might describe as punitive, retaliatory, and toxic, into a culture and climate where people's whole selves feel safe, respected, and affirmed would have. Schools that are dedicated to restoring relationships and intent on authentically repairing harm. Directors, please do the right thing and take a step further towards that possible reality by voting in support of Budget Amendment Number 5.
Kelly Lempa. And then after that will be Elizabeth Kosmak.
Hi, my name is Kelly Lempa. Lempa spelled Lempa. Good evening, Superintendent Posley, Chair Gokul Gangi, and directors of the board. I'm a member of MICA ETF, Milwaukee Inner-City Congregations Allied for Hope's Education Task Force. I am testifying today in favor of Budget Amendment Number 5 that is sponsored by Director Carr and co-sponsored by Director Leonard. This amendment allows for continued funding of MPS staff in ongoing anti-racist and anti-bias training, and I urge you to approve it. Milwaukee Public School staff need more required training around anti-racism. It is not enough to have all staff take one introductory session around courageous conversations about race over a period of 3 years. Let me ask you, how much information do you end up recalling 1 month after taking a one-time training? How much information would you recall 1 semester later or 1 or 2 years later? The current plan in place is to have all staff take an intro to courageous conversations about race one time. The hope is that after reaching all staff with this training, that we will all have a shared framework for holding conversations and a shared language around race. Do we really believe that this is possible? Can changing mindsets and deep-rooted biases occur from a one-time training? Anti-racist training needs to be embedded often into our required work schedule. We cannot rely on voluntary training that occurs outside of the normal workday, even if staff are paid additionally to attend. Often, the staff who most need anti-racism training will be the ones to avoid it. We must require staff to take more anti-racism training during their regularly scheduled hours. Our students cannot wait for us to slowly take an introduction to anti-racism. They are dealing with the effects of our systemic and interpersonal racism daily when they come to school. Please act now to approve Budget Amendment Number 5 that has been sponsored by Director Carr and co-sponsored by Director Leonard. Thank you.
Good evening, Elizabeth Kosmak, K-O-S as in Sam, M as in Mary, A-C-H. In the beginning of the school year, I was faced with a major health problem and was off for 6 weeks. Fluid in my brain causing permanent vision loss is no joke. 2 stays in the hospital, 1 emergency surgery, no peripheral vision, and a brain stent later. I am here to share my story with these cool glasses on. In those 6 weeks, I was worried I wouldn't be able to do what I love, see and teach my students. I share my story because this could happen to anyone. I was so happy to hear and see in this budget that there are no cuts to benefits. Thank you. This budget also includes a full 8% cost of living adjustment, steps on the salary schedule as well. Thank you. This shows not only workers in MPS, but other districts that in Wisconsin, that MPS administration values and appreciate workers. I hope this brings more staff to MPS. I hope HR is equipped and ready for hiring this summer, because MTEA is spreading the word. MPS is hiring 8% and steps. MTEA proud. Thank you.
Next, we have Gretchen Kapperman, and after that, Ingrid Walker-Henry.
Good evening. Gretchen Kapperman, K-A-P-P-E-R-M-A-N, ERMAN. Good evening, Chair Gokul Gandhi and members of the Strategic and Budget Committee. I'm here as a white educator and a member of Aspiring Anti-Racist White Educators, MKE. I'm here tonight to speak about the proposed amendment to fund anti-racist and anti-biased practices proposed by Directors Carr and Leonard. I think we can all agree on several things. We have disproportionate discipline in our district. It's a problem. We are a teaching force of mostly white women, and systemic racism exists. Systemic racism is something that we all deal with. And so I think we can agree on that, right? I think the part that I'm not seeing from some folks is the importance of anti-racist, anti-bias training for the system. If it was important, right, this is a good step. I think you should pass it. If it was truly important, we would be seeing a lot more money allocated for this training. And I'm talking to white folks, white person to white folks. Is it important? Ask yourselves that. Is it? Ask yourselves, think about it. As you can see, I'm right on the emotional side when we're doing courageous conversations about race, and we're in that compass. I'm emotional right now. Because it's important. Period. The end.
Good evening. Ingrid Walker Henry, WALKER-HENRY, MTEA Vice President. MTEA sees two areas that require immediate support in Milwaukee Public Schools Office of Human Relations. That's in hiring and employee compensation. MPS has spoken to the reality of hiring in today's workforce and has made some changes, but has yet to fully adapt to the new reality. There hasn't been a line of educator workers out of the door since the 1980s. Other districts have managed to streamline the hiring process, and MPS has to catch up to them. When people apply for positions in MPS, they need confirmation that their application has been received, an idea about the timeline for a hiring decision, and updates. School communities should also receive that type of information, as they are the parties most affected by the length of the hiring process. MPS has lost out on many hires over the years because applicants take the lack of communication from the district as a lack of interest, and they find employment elsewhere. Another area of concern is the lack of communication between departments. MTA has seen members and their families suffer from a lack of paycheck due to an error somewhere in HR compensation, or employees have wrongly lost health insurance coverage because FMLA, workers' compensation, payroll, and benefits have no real system to communicate with each other. Our members deserve better, and HR must ensure that mistakes that have costly financial and healthcare ramifications are not made. MTA has had some discussions with MPS about these matters, but we seek a commitment from administration to adapt to the new reality, which requires more communicative and efficient hiring processes, and to work with the MTEA and other unions to identify and fix structures that have allowed our members, your workers, and their families to fall through the gaps. Thank you.
Lastly, we have Lori Zarandi. I am certain I mispronounced that, so I am very sorry.
Hi,
Lori Zarodny, Zahorodny. I am a speech-language pathologist at Alba Elementary School. And first, I'd like to thank all of my colleagues who have come and spoken to you about supporting greater funding and ongoing training for teachers for anti-racism. I really want to piggyback on the comment that there's no way we can make these fundamental changes with a one-day training. And I did appreciate the training. I am a new district employee, and I thought it was wonderful that we got it. I'm not making any great changes based on one day. My first year with MPS was a good year. I left a district that I was at for 7 years. I left kids that I loved. I left colleagues that I enjoyed very much. One of the reasons, not the only reason, but a really big reason that I left was because for 7 years, my compensation kept falling relative to inflation. So after 7 years, I had less buying power when I left that district than I did when I came into it. And I knew that MPS had made a commitment to fairly compensate its teachers and help them to expect that as their skills went up, their compensation would go up. Because every year I am learning and I'm becoming a better teacher. This is such an unbelievably difficult job. And every year I think, oh, I think I kind of have the hang of it now. And then the next year I think the very same thing because there's so much to learn as a teacher. And when I was in a district where my new learning was not being acknowledged by actually improving my buying power, my ability to get the things that I wanted and needed for my family, it not only affected day-to-day practical things, it was incredibly disheartening. And as I said, it was a big reason that I left that district. So I want to thank the administration for coming to an agreement to provide us not only a step increase,
Our next speaker is Amy Mizialko.
Amy Mizialko, Mizialko, Chair Gokul Gandhi, and Superintendent Posley. MTEA is pleased to work with MPS to double the number of 35 to 40-hour CHA and paraprofessional positions from remaining ESSER funds, and we look forward to meeting with the administration very soon to go over those details about how they plan to roll these hours out to workers. The important work of CHAs and paraprofessionals, staff, that work starts before students arrive every morning. It continues throughout the day until students leave at dismissal. Having CHAs and paraprofessionals at schools for a minimum of 7 hours each day, available to welcome and transition students into the day of learning, to support them throughout their day of learning, and to see them be dismissed and transition to going home has a very positive impact on safety, climate, and culture in all of our schools. Paying for these increased hours has been done through ESSER funds for the past several years, but MPS must normalize 35 and 40-hour positions for these vital job classes for our students to have the resources they deserve for the whole school day. This will need to be permanently budgeted in future MPS budgets. To be clear, fixing this wrong done by past boards and past administrations is not easy, but it's necessary. And it's not something that can be done in a piecemeal fashion here tonight or on Thursday night, but MTA expects that the administration and the board is ready to do this important work so that we can include this move in the next MPS budget for the 24-25 school year. On a second note, to reiterate, an 8% cost of living adjustment, no cuts to benefits, and movement on salary schedules is critical I'm certain that all of you are following what other districts are doing. Racine right now is offering their educators virtually nothing. Know that MTEA will be aggressively pursuing those educators to come work here.
Our next speaker is Michelle Hilbert.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Hilbert, Hilbert, and I'm speaking as a white educator as part of ROE in support of Director Carr and Director Leonard's amendment. We know in the city of Milwaukee, we had the first governing board in the nation to pass a resolution declaring racism as a public health crisis. And that was in 2019. Pretty much every crisis I encounter in my work as an educator here in Milwaukee is connected to that. My ongoing unlearning and building and practicing with my colleagues in ROE has really helped me to stay focused on these bigger truths rather than mistakenly blaming the folks who are the most adversely affected by Milwaukee's historic racism. Fully funded anti-racist, anti-bias training of all MPS staff will contribute to correcting decades of these racist systems. Now, none of us are tasked with solving all of this, but visionary leaders can shift our course. As moral documents, budgets have impact. They can affect this course. And to better meet our students' needs, anti-racist, anti-bias practices must be integrated into the whole of MPS and with ourselves as individuals. A public health crisis calls for radical action, and systemic racism hurts all of us and affects every aspect of our work. We have to get under it in order to repair it. I urge you to fully fund Director Carr and Director Leonard's amendment with that long view of dedicated funding. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that was the last speaker who registered to speak on the budget, but I must apologize. I overlooked a speaker slip from Mr. Quentin Claiborne, who wanted to speak on the ESSER item, if he would be permitted to speak.
Yes, please approach the podium.
Hi, all. Quentin Claiborne, Klabon. Yeah, sorry, I'm the annoying guy at the meeting, circling back. Yeah, so really quickly, it was just on the ESSER research. So AIR is really great. Glad you picked them. I just wanted to offer two maybe tweaks. One, on the tutoring and mental health, hopefully they would do this, but making sure that we're pairing students who are very similar to one another is really important. So if it's just, if students get mental health care and tutoring, are they improving? Yeah, probably, we already know that. So maybe pairing students that are similar in test score, similar in demographic, even students who maybe went to like one tutoring session and then stopped going versus students who kept going, those would probably be the most similar students. That would be really helpful. Secondly, for the Ford exam, I don't object to the social studies stuff, but since it's only in 4th and 8th grade, you're not testing the same students every year, so it's tough to like compare between years. So that's all fine, but I don't think that would be the most helpful. Maybe one addition, since it sounds like there's a significant enough budget to add on a 4th item, would be those mini equity grants that are coming up. I don't recall, but I think the point of those was to like experiment and figure out if there's something that we could replicate beyond the pilot stage at an affordable price. And so AIR's really, really good at stuff, and they would be they would have capabilities that we don't as a district to be able to do that research. I don't know how you would evaluate them. They probably would. So suggesting perhaps to the board to add that on to one of their to-dos. Thank you so much.
Madam Secretary, are there any other public comments?
I have no additional speaker slips on the public hearing.
Great. We will open the floor for committee members who wish to make comments on the proposed budget amendments. We'll go in order, one by one. Sorry, I assume that. Sorry. Okay. Madam Secretary, what's the next item? I guess I should have asked you that first. I'm sorry.
The next item would be the work session on proposed amendments to the 2023-24 superintendent's proposed budget. The recommendation is that the committee determine how it wishes to proceed with each amendment.
Great. Having given public hearing on the budget in our previous item, we will now hold a work session on the proposed budget. For each amendment, I will ask for a motion for discussion purposes. We will discuss and take action on that amendment before moving to the next one. Madam Secretary, what is the first amendment?
The first amendment is Amendment 1 by Directors O'Halloran and Gokul Gandhi to create an advocate position to act as a liaison for families during central office disciplinary hearings, with funding to come from the vacancy adjustment.
Director Halloran, would you wish to make any comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. So I am proposing this amendment because, do you need a motion prior to me discussing this?
I think so, yes.
Okay, I would like to.
Madam Chair, members, typically the sponsor of the amendment would speak a little bit to why they're bringing it forward, and then you could ask for a motion.
Got it. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I am proposing this amendment to create a position. In my mind, I'm envisioning it living outside of the administration, but I am amenable to discussion on where the position would live. The reason why I am proposing this position is because I and several other board members, I know of at least several instances, and probably it happens more frequently than I would know, have gotten requests from families during suspension or after expulsion hearings with questions about the process or how to best prepare or just any number of questions, up to and including asking us to sit in on disciplinary hearings, and that since the board members would ultimately have responsibility of possibly ruling on some of the hearings at a later date, the board really shouldn't be sitting in on disciplinary hearings. So my goal for this position would be to bring clarity to the process, to improve communications. Sometimes there will be communications going out on a Friday evening for a Monday morning hearing, and there may be questions along the way throughout the week that go unanswered. And so this position would really be equip families with the information that they need to feel that they're best prepared for these discussions, and ultimately not to say that administration is acting in any way that is not in the best interest of the students, but so that families feel that they basically, so at the end of the hearing, that they are finding solution that is for the best interest of the student as well as administration, and perhaps not just the administration's best solution.
Does the administration wish to make comments?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the administration has reviewed all the proposed amendments in regards to the 23-24 proposed budget, and I have with me Nick Simmeron, who's the Director of Financial Planning Services, and he's prepared to walk us through this particular amendment, Amendment 1. Nick?
Thank you. Chair Gokul Gandhi, committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. The administration supports this effort to improve our disciplinary processes and ensure that parents are informed and involved throughout the disciplinary process. I personally am particularly excited about this role's ability to connect parents to resources to get students back on track. The only thing that the administration would ask is that the position be placed in the Department of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service. We feel that this office is best suited to handle such an assignment, and that it would be consistent with their current services that they provide our students and families.
Director O'Halloran, do you have any follow-up?
No, but at this time I would like to move approval of the discussion and the motion.
Okay.
If I could get clarification on the motion, is it approval of the amendment as presented by the sponsor, or approval of the amendment with the administration's recommendation?
Approval of the amendment as presented by the sponsor.
Thank you.
Before we do that, I'm going to open the floor for questions. Director Zambor?
Thank you. Would the administration be able to comment if the Department of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service is the same department that houses the Children's Court Liaison position?
Administration?
Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. No, the Children's Court Liaison is currently located in the Office of Board Governance.
Director Zambor?
I don't think it is.
Can we have Office of Board Governance clarify?
I can't speak to that with certainty, but I believe when the amendment was passed, it was originally proposed to be with the Office of Board Governance, but then in passing the amendment, the position was with Student Services, if I could get.
Okay, we're going to pass it back to administration.
Yes, Chair Gokagandi, members of the committee, Matthew Boswell, Senior Director of the Department of Student Services. The court liaison position currently sits in the Department of Student Services.
Director Zambor?
And that's the same department that the Department of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service is under. It's under Student Services.
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no, it's a different department.
Okay, thank you.
Director Zambor, any follow-up?
Just a comment that I do support the administration's recommendation to put it, to not have it be under Office of Board Governance. I think that's appropriate, but I absolutely support this position and think it's a great thing that we're doing.
Thank you. Any other? Director Carr?
So one, I want to say thank you to the authors of the amendment. This was really important to me for many reasons, and the reasons that the listening audience may not be privy to. But as board members, as elected officials, we receive phone calls, emails from our constituents who may attend any school in the district. And when they reach out to us, they present their concerns and they expect us to show up and be of support and advocate on their behalf as elected officials. And I think it's very important, while in any other situation or circumstance it would be appropriate to put it under the administration, I think it is very important that this be a position specifically beneficial to us as elected officials, because we have constituents that reach out to us regarding concerns in school matters that we can't show up for because there's a conflict of interest or there's a liability, and we may have to make other decisions later down the line that prohibits us from participating 100% in that process. And so I do support this amendment. I think it is very important, and I think it'll just help us on the board governance side be more responsible and responsive to our constituents. And so thank you to the authors, and thank you to everyone who supports. And I second. Okay? No. Okay.
Yes, and we're going to continue discussion, but yes, we're going to hold on to that second. Any other comments? President Herndon.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I agree too that this is probably needed because I've received some of those. Oh, I'm sorry. I agree with this amendment, and I too have received some of those phone calls asking for assistance. And so I think it's great to have a point of services that's readily available, and it's their job to do that. However, I'd like to ask administration if they would give an explanation, not just for this, but for several of the amendments as it relates to using vacancy adjustment funding, because I know that has been a critical issue as we're working with this budget and in the media and everything, just so that we are clear on that as well as the public is clear on that. But I do support this.
Administration?
Chair Gandhi, committee members, Nixon Ram, Director of Financial Planning, in working with the various directors that submitted amendments to the administration, these were the funds that were identified by the sponsor.
I guess my question then would be a question answered by perhaps Martha Kreitzman.
Administration.
Chair Gulkangandi, Director Herndon, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. There has been talk about our vacancy adjustment, which is larger than it has been this year. We did deep analysis to see if it was reasonable. It has been difficult to recruit staff, as it has been across the nation, especially teachers. So we do think that this will continue into next year. As far as using the vacancy adjustment for these amendments, we do think at this point it's an okay move. It's not great, but in the fall we are going to reconsider that vacancy adjustment. We think that that's important once we know state funding. So I think these amendments, adding to it at these amounts, will be okay at this time.
Any follow-up?
Thank you.
Any other comments? Director Carr?
I had one other question regarding the sustainability of this position. Is there a plan to sustain this beyond this year? Because as I'm looking at, just the salary alone, that's an annual one-year salary for one person. What happens afterwards? Has there been any discussions regarding retention and sustainability of this position to support parents, constituents, and the board?
Administration.
Chair Gulkangandi, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Director Carr, that's an important question. I think that we have to look at that when it comes to all staff, as far as, the fiscal cliff we'll be facing when ESSER funding goes away. So there is a need to do a deep analysis of our FTEs. We think that this position will be very helpful, and we don't go into adding positions to the budget to think that we're just going to lose that position in a year. We plan on retaining the positions, so that would be the same plan with this position.
Director Carr, any follow-up?
I have follow-up. It's not specific to the amendment. I think I missed my time to talk in the last item. Can I? Because I wanted to reference the budget in brief report that was released, and I wanted to speak to the vacancy adjustment. Is that okay? Thank you. There was a report that was released this month by the Wisconsin Policy Forum, and it's the Up in Air School Budgets Hinge on Decisions in Madison. I want to reference 2 points that is cited in the report. The first one being, and I'm going to read it word for word, under the MPS 2024 budget, given that this is the second consecutive year in which a huge vacancy adjustment has served as a key budget balancing tool, however, and that decline in enrollment has reduced the district's pupil-teacher ratio to less than 14 pupils for every one authorized teacher position district-wide, the district instead could have incorporated an updated staffing framework in the budget that abolished positions no longer deemed necessary. The second point I want to bring up is the vacancy adjustment also creates ongoing concerns, not necessarily because the projection is unrealistic, but because budgeting in this manner fails to reflect and convey to the public the district's true staffing needs. So I wanted to bring this up because for the listening audience, so I've gotten a question of how is the vacancy adjustment line item funded? And I would like for the administration to walk us through where those funds come from And why were those funds taken from various other line items or budget areas or departments to put into the vacancy adjustment?
Administration.
Chair Gulkangandi, Director Carr, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. I want to start with positions not necessary. As we develop the budget, especially for the schools, we go through each school budget and analyze it, including class sizes. So with the deep dive on each of the schools, we do not believe we are adding positions that are not necessary for the district. Also, for the staff that, for central services staff, they did not get funding to add to their budgets for salary increases. They had to come up with those within their current funding levels. So if it was necessary to lower their FTEs, then that might be one way that they decided to balance their budget. So we do not believe that we have positions that are not necessary. We do not make the budget with just adding positions that we don't really need. There wouldn't be a point to that. What is happening, though, and what's happening across the district, and I know the report talks about how our vacancy adjustment has increased. It increased sharply this year. I was worried about that, but we've been looking at it throughout the year to make sure that it's not an unreasonable amount for the current situation. The pandemic has really put us in a different place than we have ever been before. And that is why the vacancy adjustment has increased. Staffing has been very difficult to recruit. And as I said before, this is not something unique to our district. So as we go into next year, because this vacancy issue is, I'm still receiving articles that talk about how hard it is to recruit staff in any sector, that we believe that this will continue into next year. If we see that trends are changing, we're going to have to reconsider our vacancy adjustment. We will have to look at that in October, I think is a really good time to readjust our thinking as HR is recruiting very hard for school for next year.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, one of the things that we look at when we are forecasting and moving this particular proposed budget is the idea we don't have all the information. And we don't know what the state is going to be setting forward for us. And also, with what we have this in mind to be able to recruit for every single position that we have that's in this budget. Our goal is to get there. But right now, we are not there, and we're looking at, from the pandemic, looking at residuals of not being able to fully staff. And so what we want to be able to do, for instance, there were some changes that we made with the SSTs. We looked at how we could better serve that model within the school because we couldn't pay for it out of title funds, so we had to put it under the budget. That is 132 positions that we have. So we feel real comfortable about being able to make those adjustments. If it comes a time that we need to make those adjustments, I think we can make those adjustments because, you know, this is a $1.5 billion budget, and we could make the adjustments that's needed. But right now, we need to make sure that, number one, we don't want to lose staff. You know, we could easily go and cut vacancies and cut them out and then have to now try to find staff. We could be in that situation. I would rather have our staff stay in place and try to do everything that we can to recruit additional staff.
Director Carr.
And I would also like to add, we had a meeting with the Public Policy Council on last night to walk through step by step of everything that has been produced, and even Rob Hankins, you know, even a conversation with him is the idea that what we have done is something that can be done, and that's a forecast of where we're trying to go. The forecast piece is something that I said.
Director Carr?
Thank you to the administration. My second question, I guess, would be if we are experiencing a consistent decline in enrollment, and we're keeping the positions as is, it appears as if that money can be used elsewhere in better ways, I would say, more equitable ways. In the report, it mentions the 14:1 staff-student ratio. And so as I hear that, and even as I'm thinking about District 4 with the significant vacancies, with the 14:1 ratio, it appears from that ratio alone, it sounds like we have the staffing, but perhaps we have to move individuals around. I'm concerned with the significant amount that is put in the vacancy adjustment and the staffing, and I'm also concerned about budgeting for staffing that we just don't have, when it appears to be more of a need to budget and support retention efforts, because we can recruit forever, but if we're not retaining our staff, we're going to constantly be on the defensive end. And so I just wanted to hear, or shall I say, I look forward to October, where we have more clarity and we're able to provide more of a deeper dive, a deeper analysis to make more equitable financial decisions, because right now, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right to have all of these vacancies, but to have this projected amount or a specific amount in our budget that we're budgeting for, yet we're constantly declining in enrollment. So thank you all for your hard work, I will say, but I think more clarity will come, and I think in October, we're really gonna have to make some decisions about where we're putting money, because right now, it doesn't completely make sense.
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, one of the things I want to share with you is that in 2018, we did a facilities master plan, and we have that data. And then this year, we are in the process right now of a space utilization study that we need to take a closer look at as well as looking at the strategic plan. We're going to be coming back to the board next month around the strategic plan and where we go. All of those kinds of things have impact on enrollment and things of that nature. But also, we have conducted a compensation study that we're still waiting on final results from. And so I think, and the reason we are here is because I think it's a little premature to make those decisions without all the information. And our goal is to have all of the information. When we come back in October, we will have the information from the state, what the state is going to be, what is it going to be there. And we will have the information to all the other 4 caveats that I just talked about. So it will help us with just that and making things happen. So, thank you.
Any other questions regarding, yes, Director Simpson?
So back to the amendment, I'll speak to that. Yes, I support the amendment, and yes, we've all had families contact us with questions about working through the process, and I know that they're given a lot of information at those hearings or at those meetings, but I know sometimes you go home, you think about it, you have further questions, so this position will be really helpful. And I also think that in terms of students re-entering afterwards, I'm hoping that part of this work can help families navigate how to re-enter MPS, finding a school, helping them navigate that process, because, I know families really struggle with that part of it too. So thank you to the makers of this amendment. I think it's really critical for some of our families, and it'll be a great resource.
Director Zambor?
Just a question for the administration, and the administration's response. The administration was recommending putting it under student services so as not to disrupt the board-created disciplinary process. Can you just explain what your concerns were around that?
Administration?
Yes, Nick Sinram, or I'm sorry, Chair Gokagandhi, committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. So the much of what student services does is defined by state statute, from the notices that we give to parents to the structure in which we operate in, or the student services operates in. Within that state statutorily created framework, the board has then created a process that delegates disciplinary hearings and especially expulsions to student services, and then it is reviewed by you at committee and at the full board. The concern of the administration is that if this position were to be placed in board governance, that might cause the perception of a conflict of interest, and I believe that that was articulated by Director Carr earlier. And so that's the reasoning behind, or part of the reasoning behind, putting the position in the Office of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service.
Director Zomber.
Just a point of kind of parliamentary procedure around if someone were to recommend moving to approve the amendment with the administration's response to put in student services, would we have to dispense of the first motion?
Madam Chair, Director Zombor, members, so you have a motion that's on the floor. This is a committee, so they don't technically need a second. But if a member had a different idea, you could offer a substitute motion. The substitute motion would then be acted on first. If the substitute passes, then we're done with this one. If the substitute fails, then we'd be back to the original motion.
Go ahead.
So I would move that we approve amendment number 1 with the administration's recommendation to house the position under student services.
Okay. Can the secretary please call the roll? Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead. Director O'Halloran, and then Director Simpson, and then administration, or probably in between those three.
I just wanted to clarify the reason why I had suggested that it live in either Office of Accountability and Efficiency or Office of Board Governance is because through the disciplinary process, if a student is suspended, essentially the principal begins gathering information and almost preparing the case against a child, and then administration, it goes to central office for a hearing, and that's also administration. And so it would almost create like an independent voice that would be speaking, so that parents feel like I have somebody who is just telling me what I need to know to best support my kid, not somebody in the same way that I liken it to HR represents the employer, not the employee. Like, this would be a position that would represent the family rather than what the administration. And that, once again, I just want to make clear, I am not saying that administration is acting in a way that is unfair to children or their families, but for the perception of creating an independent voice, that's why I was hoping that it would live outside of administration. I'm certainly amenable to discussing, it living somewhere else, but then I just want it to be clear that it's, like, I want somebody that's going to go hard for families.
Any follow-up? Director Zomber?
Just for the sponsors of the amendment, what position in Office of Board Governance do you see supervising this role?
Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I have not decided where within the organization chart it would live, but do you have a suggestion?
Director Zomber.
No, I was just kind of concerned about the ripple effect it would have on, changing job descriptions and changing the role of the Office of Board Governance, kind of outlined by the board. And so I just didn't know if there was like a deeper plan about where how that would all line up.
Director O'Halloran.
Yeah, I don't know that it would necessarily change what I envision the role of Office of Board Governance doing right now. Like if a constituent writes to us, that frequently their first step is to go to governance at Milwaukee or one of us directly, in which case we refer it back to somebody within the Office of Board Governance to investigate or respond to if we are just not in a position to be able to do that. So I guess I don't really see it as inconsistent with the work that I already expect of Office of Board Governance. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Director Simpson, did you want to go? And then I'm going to pass the gavel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so, yes, one of the notes I had was just kind of questioning where it would be housed. So, I feel like to have it be separate from Office of Board Governance would be important. I just, I feel like we get, we're not supposed to be very, involved in the cases that come before us. So, I don't know, I guess I would just be more comfortable if it were housed outside of Office of Board Governance. Like you said, people will call, then we refer them to whoever can best service the concern. So this would just be, we could refer them to this position. I understand sort of not wanting to be administration, so I don't know if Office of Accountability and Efficiency would be the best place. I'm just trying to find the best house for it. So I'm just a little uncomfortable with it being in Office of Board Governance.
Okay, I'm going to go to administration.
Thank you, Chair Gandhi, committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. I must have inadvertently caused some confusion earlier. The administration's position, to clarify, is that the position would be separate from student services and assigned to the Department of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to pass the gavel really quickly.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
I wanted to just, the process that Director O'Halloran and I, as we were talking about who would be the best kind of independent advocate, right? And so that's why we both came to the conclusion that it should be outside of administration. And perhaps, I think Director Simpson, you suggested maybe it would be great to have it in the Office of Accountability and Efficiency. And so I was just wondering if Mr. Chasen, I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, if you can comment to whether you think that would be a feasible and appropriate option.
Chair O'Halloran, Matt Chasen, Office of Accountability and Efficiency. Just speaking candidly, it would be a little bit of mission drift given the charge of the office. It's more heavily rooted in fiscal transparency. That does, in fact, bring us into an intersection where we will look at appeals related to RFPs and bids, but you can legitimately argue there's a fiscal component there. This would be slightly outside of that scope. Certainly, I understand the board's interest in making sure that there's an independence. Now, the sense is that the administration has tried to arrive at that by having the review done in an area outside of the student services area. If I remember the org chart, that would then be underneath a different chief as well. So to the extent that that affords additional sort of maneuvering there, I can see the rationale there. But that's my quick take on being put on the spot on that question.
Administration.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, one of the things I also want to add with the parent, the place that we placed it is the idea. This is where our parent coordinators in our schools are housed. That's the work they do right now anyway, working with parents and community. And when there is a constituent complaint that comes in, that comes to the administration. The administration is the individuals that get information back on a constituent concern. So, any of those kinds of things, the administration still will be touching the process, and I just truly think in Christy Stone's office, she will do an amazing job with making sure that it meet the needs of the board.
Okay, I can take the gavel back.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Passed back.
Okay, any other, Director Jackson?
So for me, regardless of the department, I'm looking at it security matters. So that's pertinent information, sensitive information, no different than a business with financial records. And holding that person accountable and being in charge of this space, how do we do that? What does that look like, that framework, to make sure, and I'm just being honest, gossip and rumors aren't spread around from, oh, such and such, or this, just so no mess will come about in this position. What does that look like?
Director O'Halloran.
I guess I haven't baked in the expectation that would be any different than anybody handling any other student information. I mean, at this point, we have, the hearings and the expulsion hearings, so suspension and expulsion hearings. I guess, with the job creation, build in whatever framework for protecting that information with this position as well. I guess I haven't gone so far as to write the job description yet, but I'm open to discussion around what kind of training you would see, or what kind of, I don't know if when you're talking about security, if you're literally like IT security, or if it's like when I used to work at a health insurer, that we would have HIPAA trainings on protecting, on protected health information. I don't know if it's a PD or like a physical protection of the information that you're looking to, but obviously I would be open to whatever sort of security measures you think would be necessary in order to protect student information.
Director Jackson.
And that's what it is, protecting student information. Nothing with IT. It's dealing with the case of what it is, sensitive information, so it doesn't get out based, into the wrong hands, or the person who's ever in charge with loose lips. That's what I'm talking about. So having that, as you said, that description laid out, non-disclosure, disclosure agreement, whatever that is, but just I know that's sensitive information to those families, so it doesn't get out to the public, and and there's no, as I'm hearing the word in my head, retaliatory, anything like that, that doesn't put them in a negative light, and they're the ones, the victim. That's all.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, but we have a substitute motion.
Yes.
And could you just remind us what that substitute motion is?
The substitute motion is by Director Zombor, and that is to adopt the amendment with the administration's recommendation, which is for the position to be assigned to the Department of Strategic Partnerships. I lost my screen. And Customer Service, yes. On that motion, Director Carr.
I'm going to have to abstain because I don't, I understand arguments on both sides, and each one makes sense. So I'm going to abstain.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
For clarity, this is for where the office, what office should hold.
The motion is to adopt the amendment to create the advocate position, but with the position to be assigned to the Department of Strategic Partnerships and Customer Service.
I'll pass.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zombor.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Okay. Wow. It's a huge responsibility despite the office. And I hate that I'm new, that I don't know what I need to know in this space, making this decision. Whether the stance can I take instead of saying,
You could say aye, which would be to approve, no, which would be that you're opposed, or you could abstain.
yeah, I'm approving of the position because it's needed. It's just the space aware, so I abstain.
That's 5 ayes. I'm sorry, Director,
Andrew forgot Garcia. Oh, you did vote? Did you vote?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just kidding.
Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
Okay. 6 ayes, 2 abstentions. That motion passes.
Madam Secretary, the next amendment, please.
The next amendment is Amendment 2 by Directors Leonard and Gokul Gandhi to increase the capacity of the MPS Foundation by adding a coordinator position, with funding to come from the vacancy adjustment.
Okay, I'm going to pass the gavel to Vice Chair O'Halloran.
The gavel has been passed, and I'm going to go ahead and call on Director Gokul Gandhi.
Thank you. So Director Leonard and I have been in conversation with the MPS Foundation Executive Director, and upon just looking at their scope of work and what they aim to accomplish and the growth that they'd like to have in not only outreach to alumni, but also their fundraising goal, it became evident that they do need another staff person to help achieve that. And I think that would not only benefit our district, but benefit our students and the alumni in the community. And so we are asking to increase the staff by a coordinator position. So willing to answer any questions you might have.
Do we need a motion to discuss this, or does administration want to? I'll call on administration. How about we start there?
Chair Gokul-Gandhi, Chair O'Halloran, and committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. The administration supports this amendment and is excited about the ongoing generous support from the MPS Foundation to help our students and families. Thank you.
Would you like the gavel
I'll
back?
take the gavel back.
Director Gokul, okay, let's pass that gavel back then.
Okay. Do committee members wish to make comments? President Herndon. Sorry, I saw a hand up. Yeah, you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I would bring up the issue of the vacancy adjustment so that we include that verbiage when we vote on this, so we know we're going to revisit the finances in October when we get the actual funding. With that, I support it.
Director Carr? Okay. Director Garcia?
Yes. So my question is just a little bit more clarity as to, I guess, like the fiscal overlap for this specific position. And I'm only referencing this because there was an amendment in last year's budget where a very similar position had been suggested to sit in the MPS Foundation. However, we were told that because it's a different organization, that was something that we could not put forth for consideration for the budget. So I'm just wondering, like, if we can just walk through what has changed, just so that we can have clarity as to, that relationship. And I'm totally in support of this, just having that question for clarification purposes.
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the item, to my understanding, if my memory serves me correctly tonight, on last year's budget, we added a position, I thought, and we moved that forward. We had a situation where we could not send staff from the administration on a daily basis over to help out. They had to be assigned to the foundation. So we waited until the end, and we put it in the budget, and that's the same thing that is happening tonight. They need additional support. This will make a total of 4 people over at the foundation, and they are on to some big campaigns that they are trying to raise funds for the district, and there is a need.
Any follow-up, Director Garcia?
No, thank you. And I agree with the underscoring the fact that there's a huge need, and I'm excited that we're moving in this direction.
And just for context, the Madison Foundation has about triple the number of foundation staff and is a much smaller district than us. So just a point of order of information. Any other questions? Administration? Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, and I quoted last year, it could have been the year prior to, but I know it has been done before. Just want to be clear on that. Just didn't want to put it out there. It was last year and it was the year before, one of the years, but we did it.
Director Carr?
So for clarity, this is a position for 1 year, and then we're going to look at funding to see how we can sustain it moving forward.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, yes, just like all of the positions, this is this budget cycle. However, we are hoping that the foundation will be able to fund itself and be able to bring that cost to cover whomever they want to bring on. But yes, we will have to revisit, and we're going to take a little closer look in October as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Zomber?
So I am really excited about this budget amendment. It's one of the few amendments that pays for itself, potentially. So I just wanted to speak my support of it and hope that we can continue to support the foundation because I think it's a really low risk.
Any other comments? Okay, I am looking for a motion. Director Carr?
I move approval of the budget amendment to, create another position for the foundation.
Will the secretary please call the roll?
On Director Carr's motion to approve the amendment as presented by the sponsor, Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zambor.
Aye.
Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes. The amendment is passed.
Madam Secretary, the next amendment, please.
The next amendment is Amendment 3 by Director Jackson to add 2 planning assistant positions to the Black and Latino Male Achievement BLMA program with funding to come from the vacancy adjustment.
Sorry. Director Jackson, would you like to make any comments?
Yeah, my computer went out.
Okay, we're going to get an IT person in the interim. Did you want to speak to the amendment, or do you want to wait?
Yeah, I can wait a second.
Okay. You can fix this first. We're just experiencing some IT issues, so we are just going to wait a second while we reset the computers.
Oh, great. Go ahead. Madam Chair, just so we don't have dead air, maybe the administration could speak
that would be
first, not to overshadow Director Jackson, but just so we don't have dead air.
Yes, that would be great. Administration.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. The administration supports the director's amendment and the work being done by BLMA programs. There's important work to be done, and the administration supports it.
Director Jackson.
Yeah, so nonetheless, thank you, administration, but also Director Gokul Gandhi.
Yes, I would like to suggest a friendly amendment if possible, so I'm going to pass the gavel.
The gavel has been passed, and I'm going to go ahead and call on Director Gokul Gandhi, please.
Director Jackson, I was wondering if you would be amenable to sharing one of the positions for the Gender Identity and Inclusion Department. So there's 2 positions right now that you've listed in this, and if you would be willing to make a friendly amendment that one of the planning assistants would support the Gender Inclusion Department that was created and it has been expanding their work, and one would support the staff for BLMA.
Director Jackson?
Yes, I'll support that.
Okay, so do I make a substitute motion?
There is no motion on the floor right now, Madam Chair, so you can move to do whatever you wish.
Director Gokul Gandhi, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion that we approve Director Jackson's amendment with a change that one of the 2 planning assistants goes to the Gender Identity and Inclusion Department.
All right, and would you like the gavel back, Director Gokul
I would
Gandhi?
like the gavel back.
All right, let's do that.
Thank you so much. Would committee members like to make comments on this item? Okay. Oh, yes, Director Garcia.
I just want to thank the authors of the amendment. I think that as we're looking at the scope of work before us, it is really important to adequately staff the efforts that we are expecting, these newly established offices or, offices that are, just moving the needle along in very critical issues. So thank you, and I'm in full support.
Any other comments? Director Carr?
I would like to be a co-sponsor, if at all possible.
So noted.
Any other comments? Oh, would you be okay with that, Director Jackson? I probably
Yes,
should have
not a
gotten your
problem.
permission before I just decided for you.
That's not a problem.
Great. Any other comments? Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are just excited that that we are able, that this is able to do it that way because it is truly a need in both offices.
Anyone else? Okay, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, the motion by Director Gokul Gandhi is to approve the amendment with one planning assistant to be assigned to the BLMA office and another planning assistant to be assigned to the Gender Identity and Inclusion office. On that motion, Director Carr.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
Aye.
Director Jackson.
Aye.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Seamson.
Aye.
Director Zambor.
Aye.
And Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes. The amendment is passed.
Madam Secretary, the next amendment, please.
The next amendment is Amendment 4 by Directors Gokul Gandhi and O'Halloran to dedicate funding for planning relative to the growth indicators for elementary IB and other high select school programs, with funding to come from ESSER and ESSER $3.
I'm going to pass the gavel to Director O'Halloran.
The gavel has been passed, and I'm going to call on Director Gokul Gandhi, please.
Thank you. So I would like to speak to this amendment. This really came, it's more of a intersection of our facilities master plan, our space utilization, and to understand what regional development looks like and to move quickly to determine if we can offer a really great option that takes into consideration where students are coming from, where maybe we could get more students on the sort of, border, north side, south side, and create a high quality option that will incorporate ESSER funding so that before it runs out, we were looking at some of the different cities like Cincinnati that have used some of these funds to create really amazing new options with high quality facilities and state of the art technology for our students. And so we have put this forward to sort of move quickly with a report that would come back by the end of the year of what our options could be to create something new for our students. So I will pass the gavel back to, or I will request the gavel back from Director O'Halloran.
It has been passed back to Director Gokul Gandhi.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it to administration now.
Thank you, Chair Gokul Gandhi, committee members. Nick Sinner, I'm Director of Financial Planning. The administration hears and understands that our parents, they enjoy these high-level, high-selection curriculum options in our district, and we support using these funds to study how we can increase and improve these curriculum offerings that aligns with the results of our space use plan.
Do members wish to make comments on this item? President Herndon?
Thank you, Madam Chair. For me, I'd like more explanation. It seems a little vague. Are we just setting aside a pot of money to basically evaluate direct learning services? I mean, what is your expectation out of that totally? Is it adding staffing, or is it a program evaluation or curriculum evaluation?
I'm going to pass the gavel. Do I have to pass the
Director Gokul Gandhi, would you like to respond, please?
I would like to respond. President Herndon, it's a little bit of both. Is there a potential to create a new facility to add staffing? Are there options that our community really likes that they would like to see more of in the district? And how does that align? How can we move faster with our space utilization plan and our strategic plan to to really provide that option. You know, we see declining enrollment year over year. So is there something that we can do in the immediate, in the next 3 to 5 years, to provide really high-quality, viable options to our parents? And is there a need, an immediate need that's not being met? So it's really to explore the intersection of programs, facilities, and staffing, and also location. So where would that go, and where is it really needed? Where are the gaps currently in the district that we might not be looking at? And this was really, you know, we often hear this sort of discussion of north side, south side, and so just really getting a sense of where would an equitable place be to put a really wonderful new facility that our parents and community need. And not assuming that they need something, but really this is to explore if there is a need and if it's feasible, given the ESSER dollars we currently have.
Right, because when I look at it and it's talking about extracurricular contracts is where the funding would be decreased. We've struggled to get these services in the north side as it stands right now. So it would appear that, you know, then we could conceivably be removing services from some of the areas that we work so hard to improve, because we aren't even done. You know, in my district, we aren't even done. But what we have achieved is high quality and valued by the community.
Yes, so I would ask the administration to maybe reevaluate where the money is coming from. I did not, we broadly talked about ESSER funding. I don't think we talked in particular about what exact pot. So that is not something I would like to see decreased either, and I agree with you. So I'm hoping to defer to administration to ask if we can look at another pot of money, because I do agree with you on that.
Administration?
Sorry, thanks. It's all good.
I got you.
Thank you, Chair O'Halloran and committee members. The administration agrees with both of the director's opinions. And actually, I neglected to mention previously that after some further analysis, the goal at this point is to fund the study with ESSER dollars, but from a different pot. It would come from our health initiatives, funds that were formerly going to be allocated to PPE that are no longer necessary and can be repurposed.
Chair Gokul Gandhi, would you like the gavel back to continue driving, or would you like me to continue?
Maybe you keep it for now.
Okay. Other committee members, questions, concerns? I saw Director Garcia's hand first, and then I'll go to Carr and then Simpson.
Yes, my question is if we can just get a listing as to exactly what are we referring to with high select school programs?
Director Gokul Gandhi, would you like to provide any insight, and then I'll ask administration to respond as well.
Yeah, I would defer to administration for that, because that was not solely the intent.
Perfect. Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we looked at a number of different factors. We looked at our IB schools, our high select schools, you know, whether it's the arts or whether languages. There's a number of schools where we have a waiting list, and we have families that really want to get in on those programs. And we also have families that make other decisions because they are unable to be able to access one of those programs. And just looking and taking a study, but also looking at what type of programs we don't have here in the city. We talked about high tech high, you know, when it's from a technology standpoint, looking at some schools that we don't have offerings for. But this was mapped on, to my understanding of the conversation, looking at like our Montessori, our IB, our language immersion, our arts, and just gifted and talent, as well as AP. Those are the areas where they have seats fill up very fast, especially at the high school level. And so looking at what can we do, is there a need for another school, and where that school should be located, and would we be able to fill that school and get more and be able to draw to help the enrollment process as well.
Director Garcia, do you have follow-up?
No, just how, I guess, like my reaction to what is before us. You know, I guess like I understand from a like staying competitive, like within the market. I think it's really important for us to really stay forward-looking as to, you know, from facility standpoint, from programmatic standpoint. I guess my concern is more of, you know, we're investing $500,000 of ESSER funding to do this forward-thinking work with the knowledge and obviously the, like what lies before us now. So I guess I'm just finding it a little bit difficult to release that amount of money, knowing that there's work that needs to be addressed now in relation to, you know, retention of the schools, whether that's, when I asked about the high select program, so it looks like language, IB, tech, you know, just things that are going to make us a little bit more competitive. So I don't know if like administration has any response to, I guess, like how we are doing both. And I guess it's not necessarily an either or, but it's and. So I just want to hear a little bit from the administration as to, you know, how will this help the current situation that we're in from a student retention perspective.
Administration? Do you need clarity on the question, or are we good? No, it's totally fine if you would like.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this is also something that will help us with our space utilization study. We have that coming forward, looking at the space that we have within the district. Is there some adjustments that need to be made? And I'm sure that study is going to tease out some things that we can do differently. And so, however, looking at the idea, we do have high selects that, you know, everyone wants. So what can we do for our customers, our students, and our families to get more of those individuals to return to our district and be, this is their choice and not have to turn anyone away from a program that they want to be a part of.
Director Garcia, good?
I think I'm good, thank you.
Okay, next I have Director Carr, and then I'll go to Director Simpson, please.
I think this is necessary, but I am struggling with the urgency. And I say that because with so much uncertainty around school funding, and understanding the vacancy rate, 8% is great. It's a great start, but we still have teachers to take care of. I just think $500,000 can be spent or can be better used in other areas, perhaps to support effective, relevant professional development for our teachers, to do more around district-wide culture and climate. Like I said, I think this is necessary, but I don't think it's urgent enough to fit in this budget, and something that we need to be addressing right now when we have not just teacher vacancies, but we have schools in District 4 that are not meeting their enrollment numbers. Because the parents or families are leaving the district. How do we bring those babies back into the schools we already have that it currently exists, and then we can look or think or engage in forward thinking. So I don't know that I understand the urgency or support the urgency with this right now.
Director Gokul-Gandhi, would you like to respond to the sense of urgency and how this would potentially impact current enrollment needs as well as future needs?
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying, and I think to Director Garcia's point, it's a both and planning right now, this isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow, right? The study is going to take time to procure someone who's going to be able to understand our space utilization plan, our strategic plan, and also our facilities master plan. The intersection of all of those while also looking in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. And so I don't disagree at all. There are so many needs right now. And at the same time, if we're not planning for the future and thinking about ways that we're going to offer really compelling options, compelling facilities, and also thinking about how we're going to respond to, in the face of declining enrollment. I think we have to start thinking about that now, because if we think about that 3 or 5 years from now, we're sort of already going to be there. And so I get what you're saying, and I think this was really an attempt to get ahead of the game, which is, not get ahead in the sense that it's already sort of dire. And I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I just think we were trying to understand, how do we be competitive, stay competitive, and what does that look like? And is it even affordable? Can we afford it, and can we do it? And what would that timeline look like?
Director Carr?
Like I said, I don't disagree with the work. I don't disagree with the vision. I don't think that this is urgent enough when we have the vacancies that we do, the decline in enrollment. I even think about like the budget amendment that's coming up next. This money can be better spent to support educators in trainings, professional development that they can practice on the daily. Like, I'm struggling with $500,000 for something to explore or plan something that we're not going to benefit from right here, right now, when we have other critical needs. So I will not be able to support this right now.
Okay. And then I have Director Simpson and then Director Zombor.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think that the devil is in the details. So, like what do you hope to find or get from this study? I guess that would be one question. So what would be the things that you would want that study to bring back to you? What information?
Director Gokul-Gandhi?
Yeah, I think it would bring back, is there potential for a really state-of-the-art facility that we could build in an area of the district where we're not necessarily servicing students, or where our facilities are so outdated that we can't really provide them with an option that compels them to stay in the district? We've heard time and time again with our air conditioning, with crumbling facilities. Last year, we talked about elevators that weren't working, making our buildings ADA inaccessible. And so that's one thing. Secondly, thinking about what are the programs that our community members really love, and can we somehow house 2 or 3 of those in one place that could be sort of a central place where people can come, right? Could it be along a bus route that's really accessible? Are there places where we're lacking regional development? Can this look at feeder patterns of school and then sort of not only keep kids in the district, but pull kids from maybe, to open enroll? And so those were the types of items that I was hoping that we could bring back. And then also with that, can we act in the next, really with a sense of urgency in the next 3 to 5 years as we look at, in the face of declining enrollment? Can this be something that we can do urgently to sort of combat that or mitigate those negative side effects?
Director Simpson?
No, thank you.
Okay. Director Zombor?
So when I think about, some of the schools that are, like specialty schools, I know we have some schools that have wait lists. And then so I know there's urgency in making sure that we're not losing families that want to participate in some of these programs. So I support kind of the what has been verbalized tonight about the amendment, but when I read the amendment intent that was presented to us, there's I feel like there's a disconnect. And so I don't know if there's a way to give the sponsors time to just clarify the intent of the amendment so that the board can be really clear about what it is that we're approving. I would feel more comfortable voting on something just that has a little more detail.
Director Gokul-Gandhi, or perhaps Madam Secretary, I don't know how, what mechanism we can use to clarify amendment intent from the floor.
I would suggest that perhaps the intent could be put forth as a motion that lays out exactly what the objective is and which funding sources are to be affected, and then it would be clear, and then you could vote it up or down, and that would be most efficient.
Director Gokul-Gandhi, do you feel adequately prepared to make a motion and clarify the funding source and perhaps answer whatever Director Zombor is about to ask? Maybe we'll go to Director Zombor
Third one
first. We'll give you a minute to marinate.
I was just going to make sure that it had administration's updated source of funding for the PPE funds, whatever motion it is.
Director Gokul Gandhi, you had like at least 30 seconds. Now, are you ready?
I can absolutely try. I don't disagree with you. I think this intent is really unclear, and I can understand the hesitation around supporting something where you don't feel like it's. So I can try to verbalize the intent just the way that I did to explaining it to you all as those three big buckets. So here I go, and Director O'Halloran, please add any support that you might think I missed, and very open to hearing from my colleagues too if you feel that the motion I'm about to present is not complete. So I move that the intent read to create a study that allows us to look at three things in particular. One, the creation of a new facility that is created with input from the community. Two, evaluation of potential gaps in facilities and regional development. And three, an evaluation of high-quality programs that our community needs, and the funding source be updated to ESSER funds used for PPE.
Madam Chair, can I ask for a repeat on that? So I have to conduct a study, to do three things: explore the creation of a new facility with
community input.
To evaluate the potential gaps in something.
Current regional development options and gaps in the city of programmatic offerings with equity in mind. I'm just adding things, I'm sorry.
Current regional development options with equity.
Mm-hmm.
And three, to evaluate high-quality programs.
And where we might expand or put those programs where where people are not currently being served.
Okay. I think I have the motion now, Madam Chair.
And the updated ESSER funding.
Director Gokul Gandhi, can I pass the gavel
Yes,
just for 1
please.
minute?
That would be great.
Thank you.
Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. One of the reasons why I really wanted to co-sponsor this is because to administration's point earlier, we've had a facilities master plan since 2018, and actually my predecessor from two directors ago gave me the 2011 facilities master plan, and I just really want to create that sense of urgency around, we have now two facilities masters plans that I'm not sure exactly what was done with them. We have an aging fleet of buildings. We have a warming climate, and there is study after study that shows there is actual learning loss associated with increasing climate and not having air conditioning. We have buildings that, some of them are beautiful and I love them, but some of them were built at a time honestly, before my dad was even born, and we've cobbled together some of the buildings, and we have one building that was created with one wing, and then we put two different wings on, and some of those air conditioning systems, or the HVAC systems, don't even talk, so you end up with one wing of the building that's 90 degrees and one wing of the building that's 60 degrees. And so my intent with this is to recognize that our students deserve better facilities, and I recognize that the problem is large, but I don't want the enormity of a problem to prevent us from moving forward. I would like to create an actual path forward so that I have a plan to say, okay, we're going to do this, and maybe this is how we would fund it. And I don't want to put too much detail into it that says, I think it needs to go in this intersection and have this programming. I think that is really administration's probably expertise and having listened to all of our input and the community's input would know far better than I would on what is needed and where it's needed. But I just hope that at the end of the space utilization plan and the 2018 facilities master plan and the end of the strategic plan, that we can come to an actual implementable plan to start creating the buildings for the future for our children. So it's not just for my children. I'm talking about my children's children. How do we build the programming and the buildings for those children? And with that, that was just more of an observation.
Okay, Director Herndon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to share something along this line as well. I think the thought processes are quite well, and we do need to look to the future, but we also need to be a little realistic. And that is that, one, the buildings are super, extremely old, and we've kind of evaluated from time to time over the years as to whether rehabbing them was even feasible. On the other hand, our biggest problem is with our funding from our state legislator. So to look at it thinking that within the 5 years we're going to be able to put a brand new school building on the north side, the east side, the west side, south side, I don't think that's realistic at all. The other thing is that we're living with a very mobile society. And so when we talk about programming and programming changes and that type of thing, we do have specialty programs currently in the district that are not totally utilized. I would be concerned with that. That's just me. So I think that the strategic plan, okay, but then when we start talking about banking on all of this money, I can't get my head around it when they don't want to even fund special education students at 60% at this point. And we're sitting here thinking that we have to wait until October to really know if they're going to give us anything. And they're, something I read, they're only funding the district out of one of the funds at state level. They only want to fund us at 10% when they're funding other areas, because that's that level of discrimination that our state legislators love to inflict upon Milwaukee. So with that, I find it difficult to vote for this at this point. Although the intent, I get it, I understand it, but until I see more from our state government, they don't intend for us to build a new building, ever.
Director Jackson.
Yeah, so I like everything that's proposed, and I get it, you know, to be more competitive. But outside of just, quote unquote, the attractive schools, what about the schools who need the most help, who are not getting that attention? So what's the point of talking about funds when we have the partnership schools who don't feel the motivation nor the encouragement, who doesn't feel like they're part of the very conversation that we're having when it comes to budget? I attended 2 graduations at, once again, partnership schools, and it was so disheartening not to see, let alone just to see the buildings in themselves that need so much improvement. And they ask of, this is what we need, this is what we like. So if we making plans to put into the future of what could be, because it's a could, it's not an indefinite, but what's present today, funds need to be in places where need the most help outside of just the quote-unquote attractive or high-performing high schools, when other schools and student bodies will love these type of funds, and it will show an improvement in their academics as well as their behavior, because they wouldn't feel as though they're left out. And in this right here, it appears, I don't think that's been taken into consideration. It may has not, but there's so much more that can be done with those funds right now, today, opposed to propose however long now, in the future, down the line. But right now, immediately, we need to pay more attention to what's on the table and what's at stake. And that's just my opinion.
Can I pass the gavel really quickly for comment?
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Yeah, it was my intent that this would be fully focused on our public schools that report to this board, because many of our partnership schools do have boards that raise money for them with external corporate partners that are able to support them, and that's not the case with our public schools. And so we really need to be focusing on this. My intent was focusing on the schools in our system currently that are not getting external funds. So I can take the gavel back. Thank you.
Back.
Any other comments?
All right. Yeah, just for me. So once again, learning. I need to know what those are. So I'm learning this space of what's considered partnership schools and things of that nature. But if I see an NPS logo on that building, isn't that an NPS school? Or maybe I'm wrong. But I'm learning this space. But I also know the disparities in the space of different buildings of the entire student body that we serve. Regardless if something happened in the street, a teenager is automatically assumed to be an NPS student. So if we serve in a whole district or however that is, that looks as an entire body, by putting that money forward right now, is that a disservice? I don't know. But yeah, I need more clarity on what's considered an NPS school and what isn't.
Any other comments? Okay, so we do have a motion. Can you, go ahead, Director Zambor.
I do, something Director O'Halloran said made me like pause a little bit. I just want to be clear that this is about, is part of this work to look at potential, like looking at some of the smaller schools and maybe having them move, because I think that's a whole nother conversation that I'm not comfortable with rolling that into here at this time. So I just, if you could clarify how that would fit into this, if it would.
Director O'Halloran, do you want to clarify, or do you want me to pass the gavel to you?
I will, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Director Gokul Gandhi.
No, that was not the intent. This is not looking at anything of that sort. It's just truly, this is looking at adding, not subtracting.
Thank you.
I can take the gavel back. Okay, thank you.
Director Gokul Gandhi.
Any other comments?
Gavel's passed.
Director Garcia.
I think for me, as I'm just listening to the conversation and really looking at the fact, that we are undergoing a strategic plan, and then there's, the facilities plan that we have, it makes me think as to, maybe addressing my concerns about the urgency now, that we do have information that we can aggregate from different like data points that could help inform strategies where we can start planning for this. Which most likely bring down the cost of whatever like RFP comes through for this. Because I know that this amount of money is, like we're all wondering like, well, where can it be best? Where would it have the most impact? But I do think that there is an urgency in regards to, our ability for foresight. And specifically, and I'm speaking for schools, in District 6 that have come to me, because of changing bell schedules, because of changing demographic, the gentrification that's actively happening in our neighborhoods, just the importance of what adequate planning and thought around student enrollment, but most importantly, retention. There's schools right now that are suffering because of that. So I think that, just to, bring this up, the fact that, where there are data points that we currently have, from different areas, whether it's, Policy Forum, there's organizations that look at data all the time that we would have access to. But maybe that's something that we can look into putting together something in the more immediate to help us answer these questions, because, I'm in support of this. I think I feel a lot more comfortable just kind of having a little bit more clarity as to, what programs we're looking into. I do think that from a market standpoint, like we really need to get ahead of the curve. And if we don't do it now with this money, I don't know we'll ever have money to do it again without really taking away from, programs and student, school budgets.
Any other comments? Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. I just want to say that this isn't even getting ahead of the curve. We're like so far behind. This is taking the opportunity to kind of blue sky it and figure out what a really great school would be. So I just want to be clear with, like, I don't see this as even being ahead of the curve. I think it's very much behind at this point, but that's it.
And I would like to pass the gavel.
Okay, Director Kokolkandi.
Thank you. And the other thing is when we decided to put our heads together for the referendum, right, many people sat around the room and said, do you think the people of this community are even going to say yes to this? They are looking at our system. We hear so much in the news. And yet everybody rallied really hard and said, this is what our kids deserve. And to Director Garcia's point, we have this opportunity with this money to think about what our kids deserve. And if we can present a really compelling vision and say, and get the community around it and demand that's what our kids deserve. I really deeply want to believe that there's a way forward to do that, because we did it with the referendum. It was proven that people in this room stand around and said, we need this, and we need the people in Milwaukee to support this, and I don't see why we couldn't do that again when we have such impending problems, societal problems, that are disallowing our kids to go to a place that's beautiful and supportive and with the best that they deserve. And so I just, this was sort of, I know it's hard to see a vision forward when the circumstances right now seem so dire and so disheartening, and like there's just no forward movement. And so this was sort of a little beacon of hope, something that we could strive towards and something that we could get people to rally around. And that's sort of the other intent of this. So thank you. I'd like to pass the gavel back, or I would like to take the gavel back. I don't even know anymore.
Director Kokolkandi, the gavel is passed.
Okay, Director O'Halloran.
I did also, just as far as long-term funding, eventually, can administration give us clarity around when OPEB would be fully funded, and at that point, like if they have an estimate for how much that would free up in the annual budget?
Chair Golkangandi, Director O'Halloran, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. Right now, we pay about $60 million to OPEB each year, and it's expected that it would be funded if things go as planned with the actuary results in 2037.
Okay.
Director O'Halloran.
Thank you. So I know that's obviously not next year, but I do want to point out that at some point, we may have many more millions in our annual budget to start really considering some of these great projects. So I understand that's the urgency that is required of this amendment is different, but long-term, we may have the potential to really fund great schools and revisit the facilities master plan. So, I don't think that with this amendment that we're directing a specific funding source for long-term growth, but I think that there are a number of avenues available to us longer term, and I just want to explore all of those options.
Any other comments? Director Simpson.
I just want to go back to something I believe Director Garcia referenced was, is there a way to get some of this information without the current information that we already have or that we will be getting through studies that we're currently involved? And I guess administration, if you could speak to that.
Administration.
Chair Golkangandi, Director Simpson, members of the committee, Martha Kreitzman, Chief Financial Officer. We have a lot of data, and we have our facilities master plan. We talked about the space utilization plan. Our problem is that to actually make that space utilization plan come alive, we need funding to back those plans. And some of the funding could go towards community building around this, because that always costs extra money. Possibly contracting for some services to make sure we do a good job with that community input. And also contracting for plans so that we can visualize what this might look like.
Director Simpson, any follow-up?
No other follow-up. I want to just, if, Madam Secretary, if you could just read the current motion as is. I just want to make sure of some wording on one of the parts. Thank you.
Certainly, and if the motion maker could please correct me if I've missed something. The motion by Director Gokul Gandhi is to conduct a study to, 1, explore with community input the creation of a new facility, 2, evaluate the potential gaps in current regional development options through an equity lens, and 3, evaluate high-quality programs and where they may be most equitably expanded, with funding of $500,000 to come from ESSER 3 Health Initiative dollars.
Director Simpson? I'm open to wording changes.
Oh, no, so I believe at some point you had said, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was in the third point, something about expanding services to where it is, people are currently not being served. And if that is something you said, or if I just wrote that down, if that could be included.
I captured it as where they may be most equitably expanded, but if there's different wording.
Yes, that's correct.
That's okay, that's fine. Right, because I think that, right, I mean, we all, I have a school right now, they need a new sound system. It's like, well, where is that money going to come from? Do they have to be on a list where, 4 years from now, they might get it? So, right, I think that's the tug and pull here. The idea of building a new facility and offering programming in an area where they could really use a brand-new facility is super exciting. I know people in the community would love to see that happen, so that's a tug and pull. But, so for me, I think it boils down to that idea of doing this in a way that's equitable, that we really carefully think about where these programs would be housed.
I'd like to pass the gavel so I can respond to that.
Director Gokul Gandhi?
Yeah, and Director Simpson, that's exactly the point of this, right? Is that we don't, at first, the administration's already taxed with all those plans that you just heard of. And to Martha's point, there is really great data. And this might not cost this whole amount, and I hope it doesn't, given that we have some of this data. But I do think we need an opportunity to at least evaluate, what does that look like, and how can we move forward with something? Because if we don't do it now, I don't know. I would never feel comfortable taking this out of just a regular budget. The only reason that we put this forward now is because we have I'm not saying that this is creating a lot of flexibility, and I understand we're trying to fund other things and plug holes that have been created because of the lack of funding we're getting, but we do have to be forward thinking, and that's, to your point, that's part of why we are putting this forward. I can take the gavel back.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion points? Okay, Madam Secretary.
So the motion is by Director Gokul Gandhi to conduct a study to, 1, explore with community input the creation of a new facility, 2, evaluate the potential gaps in current regional development options through an equity lens, 3, evaluate high-quality programs and where they may be most equitably expanded, with funding of $500,000 to come from ESSER 3 Health Initiative dollars. On the motion as read, Director Carr.
No.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director Herndon.
No.
Director Jackson.
No.
Director O'Halloran.
Aye.
Director Simpson.
Aye.
Director Zambor.
Aye.
And Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
That is 5 ayes, 3 noes. The amendment passes.
What is the next amendment?
The next amendment is Amendment 5 by Directors Carr and Leonard to fund training of current and newly hired MPS staff on anti-racist, anti-bias, and restorative practices for 3 years, with funding to come from ESSER and ESSER 2 dollars.
Does Director Carr wish to make comments?
Yes, so first things first, I want to give a huge shout out to Arwe and all of the community partners that came together, Micah, that came together to advocate for this budget adjustment and to ultimately advocate for more racially conscious and anti-bias practices in our schools with our children and our families. And so I obviously am in support of this. I think it is very important. And I also think as we talk about not just recruitment, but retention, we had a group of our educators, of our staff, come forth and speak about what they need and what they know to be important and what they understand to be a solution to one of many problems that are pending or facing our students, our district. And so for that, I support the proposal, I'm sorry, not proposal, amendment. And I move that we approve of the proposal as is.
Administration?
Thank you, Chair Gokagandi, committee members, Nick Sinram, Director of Financial Planning. The administration wholeheartedly supports the intention of the sponsor's mission with this amendment. However, unfortunately, the annual budget process really does not allow for earmarking of funds throughout multiple budget years. So the administration would suggest funding the amendment at $129,000 to support the training in the 43 schools identified. And then if the board would wish to continue the program in year 2 and 3, that would be for future boards to set aside and allocate those funds.
Director Carr?
So as I'm reading this, and I needed a refresher, it's a long night, it doesn't explicitly state that this is, actually, it does. So can I amend the language in the intent to eliminate the language that 3 years and focus on a year?
Madam Chair, Director Carr, you are the maker of the motion, so you could withdraw it and make a new motion.
Okay, so I withdraw the original motion, and I move that we amend the intent to read, to fund the continuous annual training of current MPS staff and MPS and anti-racist and anti-bias practices for a year, along with restorative practices, and similarly train new staff within a reasonable period after their hiring to decrease disproportionate discipline and continue on anti-racist, anti-bias training for the schools identified in the DLJ report. And so I make this amendment or the motion with the understanding that we will have to come back and continue to fund this year by year. But I think the $387,000 can be used equitably to support our educators as they check their biases at the door and continue to invest in themselves and develop themselves to be better for our children.
Administration?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, the administration feel that the $129,000 will be sufficient to do just that. We have millions of dollars that are set aside in professional development for our staff throughout this budget, and the administration stands ready to meet with any stakeholder around moving forward around professional development opportunities. And professional development opportunities change as the year go forward as well, and we are prepared to sit down with stakeholders to meet those needs, but to set aside the $129,000.
Do committee members wish to make comments? Director Carr, I'm going to go to the motion maker first.
Oh,
Okay, Director Garcia.
Yes, and I think administration began answering this question, but can you just kind of delineate exactly what this funding would be an add-on to? Because the way that this is presented, we have a base building equity training that's $3,000 for 43 schools. I guess like my question is like, does that mean that that one train, like what is that equal to from a like delivery standpoint?
Administration.
Chair Gandhi, members of the committee, John Jagman, District Discipline Manager. So we are currently working to have all MPS staff members attend the one-day Courageous Conversations about Race exploration. That is like the introductory professional development experience. That is what we have internal capacity to facilitate. So the primary financial aspect of that is staff time to attend it. There has been additional requests for deeper and ongoing work with staff members. So that is what the additional add-on would be, is for those identified schools to engage in deeper work around addressing anti-racism and anti-bias, in addition to that one day that everyone is attending.
Perfect. And I guess my follow-up to that is, what is our plan to ensure that all 154 schools have access to that deeper dive? Like, are we looking at maybe phasing that in? 43 sounds like a great starting point because those are schools that are verbalizing the need for it. But obviously, like, we want this to go across, or am I interpreting this correctly?
Administration, could you clarify on those points, please?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, our goal is we have the Courageous Conversations about Race. There is a number of other activities that staff has partaken in this academic year and with great success, and could be duplicated throughout. Truly what we need and what I hear is that we need to sit down and develop a plan that will cover all schools in the district. The 43 schools that you're referring to, I don't know where those 43 schools come from, because the Department of Justice doesn't have a list. So, and I think that we need to look at how we can do this with all schools. So we sit ready to meet and engage with anyone around this and get a robust plan that we can move forward. And I still remain that there are professional development dollars throughout this budget that can be used for that purpose.
Director Carr, would you like to clarify the DOJ report?
So the DOJ report identifies specific schools that were cited in disproportionate discipline data. And that is where this information came from. But I would definitely be open to amending it and making it available to all schools, because that ultimately is their intention and their long-term goal. The other thing I want to get clarity around, so when you say that there's other professional, Dr. Posney, I'm sorry, when you say that there is other professional dollars to support this type of work, are you suggesting that we can potentially develop a task force that identify professional development opportunities using the dollars that are already allocated to that to support this work? Because in that case, I'd be willing to make the compromise with the $129,000.
Administration, could you clarify the schools and then the question about the money?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, we are prepared to sit with anyone. If we could do it by having a conversation, dialogue through the process, or if it's a task force, whatever it takes. Our goal is to make sure that our staff receives what they need, and from a professional development standpoint. And we go further together, and everyone being prepared to do what needs to be done. We have no knocks against this at all. We want to see this happen. But it's just the idea, I think, we need to come together and have a uniform plan that is going to work for everyone. Okay. Because what we're doing, with the courageous conversations about race, that is one session, and after that session is complete, there's a number of other things that can be done, but we need to brainstorm and work together to have a successful plan.
Director Zambor.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Gokul Gandhi. Can the administration talk about, well, and maybe this is actually a question for the sponsor of the amendment. What I'm wondering about is who's going to be, what's the intent of who is going to be doing the professional development? Because I'm interested in making sure that we have MPS employees trained to do this so that we don't have to keep contracting out these services. I see a lot of these contracts coming through AFP, and it's kind of alarming how much these consultants pay or charge the district for this work. And so I just want to get some clarity around who's going to be conducting the trainings, and can we ensure that MPS staff, MPS employees are doing that work?
I'm going to go to Director Carr first and then the administration, or go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, one of the things we did with courageous conversations about race was the idea that we did the trainer-to-trainer model, had some individuals trained to make sure that they could work with our staff in the future so it wouldn't cost us so much. We had 10 individuals, or maybe 11, 10 individuals that were trained. And what I would recommend is that we have some more individuals added to that particular list so that we can cover more schools. And then we could, would better service us that way. That's a way of making sure. That was one of the things that I asked Mr. Jagman today and yesterday, I think, with the 10 individuals that are trained in the district. Did any of those individuals retire or leave the district or anything? And he assured me that we still have 10 individuals still here. But we need to get those numbers larger so that we can continue to move forward. But there's also other cutting-edge things that are out there that we need to address and look at as well, and implement the same model with trainer-to-trainer model, using our staff to be able to provide that professional development for the future.
Director Zambor, any follow-up?
Not at this time.
I think I saw Director O'Halloran, and then I'm going to go to Director Garcia, and then we'll come back to Director Carr.
Thank you, Chair Gokul Gandhi. My only concern or hesitation around this is $3,000 per year for 43 schools feels like it can go by in a snap, in an instant. I think just in a conversation that I had recently, we would say maybe $50 for an hour of PD is what the rate might be. So we're really looking at possibly 60 hours of training spread across 30 staff members. Suddenly it's like literally 2 hours of training. So we're back to what the situation we're currently in and the complaints that we heard tonight, that it's a one-day training, that we're going back to a model of 1 or 2 hours of, ongoing or refresher training. So I was actually hoping to go the opposite way of not doing 154 schools. I would love to approve this funding and identify the schools that either are already supported with RP coaching, they're in the readiness cohort, or like the additional community schools that aren't within the restorative practices framework. I think there's like Tech, Browning, JMAC, Longfellow, Washington, just because I don't think the actual school building climate is going to shift from 1 day of training or 1 hour refreshers. I think you're going to get more, greater impact with stronger coaching after the training has already occurred. So I don't know that I'm making a substitute motion. I just was hoping for clarity, perhaps if we could prioritize the schools that have demonstrated a readiness for this, so it's not just like another training that we're putting on top and like checking a box.
I'm going to go to the motion maker first if you'd like to respond. If not, I'll go to administration. So Director Carr, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so what I will say is, and I apologize, I want to make sure that I am representing Are we well. I will say that I am more than willing to go with the administration's recommendations, followed by a proposal to develop a task force so that we can collectively plan how this will look with those educators at the table to ensure that their voices are heard and to ensure that we do this right.
Administration. Okay. Director Garcia.
Yes, so my question is around, and even with Mr. Jaggerman, you said that the limiting factor is the amount of people that are able to do the training. So when we talk about scaling the people that are going to be able to roll this out, are we looking at training more current employees, or are we looking at hiring additional bodies that would help us roll this out?
Chair Golagande, members of the committee, it's training individuals in their current role. Like the 10 facilitators, we have someone in BMLA, we have a school psych, a school social worker, student services representative, violence prevention, PBIS, restorative practices. It's those individuals, kind of like other duties is assigned, they are conducting this. So like Dr. Posey said, it would just be maintenance of that, ensuring that we always have a cohort of individuals trained in the framework to be able to facilitate. Part of that could be also to create these additional opportunities. It doesn't necessarily have to be from a vendor. Towards Director Zombor's point is we have a group of individuals that are deeper in this framework and in these protocols. That group can also create these additional opportunities for staff to engage in.
Perfect. And I guess that question is, as we're looking for a plan to be developed, to also think about what does that pipeline to becoming a trainer look like? Because I'm sure based on, folks who share testimonies or people who are listening to us from, their devices, there's folks who probably would be interested in getting involved. So I think taking some time to think about what do those pathways look like for, training trainers and really keeping this core work at the center.
Administration.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, again, I would reiterate that we stand and sit ready to move forward. And I think that is the best approach to go forward, and we are open to focus group, whatever we need to do to come together, but I just think we need to come together around this particular piece, whether that's trying to get a champion at each school, or whether it is, a portion of schools and a phase in over a number of years, whatever that look like. I just think that we need to sit down together to do that together.
Dr. Garcia, any follow-up?
No, thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Director Zomber?
So what is the motion on the floor right now?
Madam Secretary?
Madam Chair, Director Zomber, I was actually going to ask for clarification. I thought I heard Director Carr reference also directing the administration to form a task force to steer the work. Was that a modification to the motion?
Director Carr?
Can I add that in? Yes, yes, I would love to add that in.
Okay. Excuse me, then the motion on the floor is to adopt the amendment as presented, but for 1 year, for 43 schools identified in the disproportionality reports, for $129,000, funding to come from ESSER dollars, and to direct the administration to form a task force to steer the work.
Director Carr, is that an appropriate representation of your motion?
Are we? Is it? There we go. Yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Okay, on the motion as read, Director Carr, Aye. Director Garcia?
Aye.
Director Herndon?
Aye.
Director Jackson?
Aye.
Director O'Halloran?
Aye.
Director Simpson?
Aye.
Director Zambor?
Aye.
And Chair Gokul Gandhi.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes, the amendment passes.
Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Madam Chair, that was the last amendment before the committee and the last item on tonight's agenda.
The board may take final action on the proposed FY24 budget at the regular meeting of the board on May 25th, 2023. This meeting is scheduled to begin at 5:30 PM here in the Central Services Auditorium. Although this will be a public meeting, as is customary at regular meetings of the board, no public hearing will be given. Before we adjourn this meeting, I would like to thank all of you who either addressed the board tonight or provided us with written comments. The board will continue to accept written comments on the budget, and they may be sent to the Office of Board Governance, Central Services Building, Room 273, P.O. Box 2181, Milwaukee, Wisconsin 53201, or emailed at governance@milwaukee.k12.wi.us, or faxed at 414-475-8071. I would also like to thank the superintendent and his staff, particularly the members of the Financial Planning and Budget Services, for their hard work and many long hours devoted to developing a budget that will best serve our students and our family. Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.